All right. Welcome to A Little Crazy. I'm David Magee. With me once again, because she is an associate producer on this podcast, and I'm so glad to have her along, the Phoebe Goodwin.
Hey, David, how are you?
Oh, I'm so great because we went to visit today a place. When we said we're going to do this podcast, you're like, David, you need to come see where I did my summer internship before my senior year of college. And when you told me about it and some of the amazing people that work there, I couldn't help but say, great, you scheduled a tour. Tell us about where you worked before your senior year in college.
Yeah, so the summer of 2023, I knew I wanted to be in Nashville, and I scoured the earth for any nonprofit that was hiring an intern, and I got connected to the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. And I got to speak with the director who started it, Mary Trapnell, and from the moment I spoke to her, I knew it was a place I wanted to spend the summer, number one, for all of the things I do for women in trafficking situations around Nashville, but number two, I knew their staff was full of vibrant, fun, God-loving, God-fearing women.
Which is saying something because they've been through so much.
Absolutely. So an interesting thing about NAHT is they hire women who have been survivors of human trafficking. So they're a survivor-led ministry going in and saving women from human trafficking situations.
And most of them are women who faced addiction.
Right.
They face, because that is, 99% of the time there's going to be addiction involved, and women are put into the worst situations.
Absolutely. When I went into this internship, I knew I was going to gain a complete different perspective, but I didn't know I was going to gain a 40-something best friend whose life looks nothing like mine. And today we're going to be with LeAnne Walters, who was my coworker in the summer of 2023 at NAHT. She's a case manager there. She helps women in trafficking situations get out, rescue them, and then get them back on their feet as members of society. And I'm so excited. She was the highlight of my summer there, and she has an amazing story to tell.
And one of the things that when we decided, look, we're going to do this A Little Crazy podcast, and I came to you and said, look, I'd like you to join me on this. We had a conviction early on of the stories we are going to tell, because we humans, we have to break the stigma. We have to tell honest and vulnerable stories to be able to help others, because there's a lot more people in difficult situations than we often realize. Mm-hmm. And actually, those of us who've been in it, we do know there's a lot. This is one of my favorite guests because I love people that are willing to be vulnerable and speak a truth, even when that truth can be hard and even uncomfortable for some people. Mm. I live in the college town. Actually, Phoebe does too. She was talking about doing an internship in Nashville. That was in a summer ago.
Came back to Oxford.
You came back.
Might never leave.
Well, there you go. They call it the Velvet Ditch for a reason. But even the Velvet Ditch that can feel good. I've grew up there, lived back in the community, and I had my own heart in that college town at times. It was nothing like you. LeAnne, welcome. I don't know what to do but just say this. When I heard your story, and I think about this snow globe college town I live in, mm-hmm. and I hear this story about you living in and being worked out of a hotel in Oxford, Mississippi, mm-hmm. this incredible college town, in sex trafficking.
Yeah, Super 8 hotel in Oxford.
Off Jackson Avenue.
Yeah, I was actually there one night, and they were doing a sting, and I'll never forget it because I was standing outside of my door. I used to always stay in the breezeway where I thought I was being real, under the radar. And there was a guy walking through the breezeway with a beer, and he was acting like he was intoxicated, and he was like, yeah, where's the party at? And I was like, something seems weird, so I shut my door and went back in my room. Well, I had just had a client come in to see me. His friend went on the back side of Super 8 to see another girl. So after my call, my client left. he come knocking back on my door and was like, oh my gosh, my friend just went in that room and they never came out. And then 2 cops approached the door. So it was actually a sting that was going on at that time.
And when you say client, you mean like a John?
A John.
You being trafficked into prostitution.
Yes. It was off of Backpage.com, SkipTheGames.com. There's EroticMonkey.com. There's ListCrawler.com. There's MegaPersonals.com. When the feds finally shut Backpage down, they had a Backpage 1. Different sites. You could even go make your own site, but my trafficker would normally post those sites. Sometimes I worked the ads off my phone. Sometimes he took the phone from me and worked on myself. But I was not arrested in that sting that night because my client come back to tell me what happened. So immediately we packed up and we left. And my trafficker was always with me at the hotels. He would normally go step out and sit in his car or in a breezeway while I would have a client, a John. But yeah, my first trafficker was actually from Oxford, Mississippi. He wasn't from Oxford. He was running back for Ole Miss.
Wow.
Yeah, and when
so you're saying an SEC football team.
Yeah.
What would be a recognized star player?
He was a star player.
This person was, for lack of a better word, your pimp.
Yeah. We try to change the language now because in the street, in that lifestyle, they love to be called pimp.
You're not going to give it to
now,
him. You're not going to give it to him. Well, I'm going to strike that word. I'll take that one back, right? We will not give it to them today.
Yeah. Yeah, he played running back for Ole Miss, and he blew his knee out and thought he could start pimping, trafficking. But, yeah, and he did. And he was my first trafficker.
Wow.
Yeah, I was trafficked. Well, my trafficking began in my hometown in Laurel, Mississippi, believe it or not. After a 9-year divorce ended, I was strung out on meth, and our marriage was full of addiction. We had kids, and it just fell apart at the end over some traumatic things that I won't go into today, but I was living at this little hole-in-the-wall hotel called the Magnolia Motor Lodge. The hotel room was pink cinder blocks. It was terrible. And there was a little Hispanic guy on the back doing tattoos of people was coming in all day long, and he was addicted to drugs, trading drugs for tattoos. And I had nowhere to live. I was strung out, so I was pretty much homeless. And I started going outside when people were coming in and out of loneliness and out of boredom. And that is when I started prostituting. Guys would say you're cute and they'd want to hang out, and I'm like, well, I don't have anywhere to live and I'm starving, so if you'll buy me some supper and pay my hotel for a couple of days, then we can hang out. And I grew up in church. I was a mother. I was a nurse before I went into the life. I lost my nursing license due to my addiction. I wasn't even considering myself prostituting. I was just surviving is what I thought. But then the little guy that was tattooing realized what I was doing, and he come to my room one night and said, hey, come to Meridian, Mississippi and meet my friend. He went by Rock, and get on Backpage. And I was like, what's Backpage? He was like, just come and meet him. And that's when I met the running back from Ole Miss. That was the first time I ever met him. And I remember him taking pictures of me, and I remember how ridiculous, Girls Gone Wild. I was like, woo, woo. It was just ridiculous. I had no...
And what age were you at that time?
And see, this is where my biggest shame sat in. I was 33 years old, but predators and vulnerability does not discriminate.
No.
They preyed upon my vulnerability of addiction, brokenness. I already had so much severe trauma before I ever went into the life of trafficking. I got in an abusive relationship at the time I was 12 years old till I was 21. I was sexually abused as a child. All the things that led me into addiction. And then I thought life couldn't get any worse, but I was about to move into the darkest part of my life. And I met my first trafficker, and he posted me, took pictures of me, put me on an ad, gave me a name. Working girls, I saw these girls, they were so excited to see what their guy was going to name them. That was a big deal to them. And I was like, what in the world is this subculture that I've got myself into? And he was extremely violent. I didn't know. I was like, well, what do I do when they come in my room? When you send these guys in my room, what do I do? And he was like, well, if you can rob them, rob them. If you can take their money, take it. But if your last resort is to sleep, is the sexual, whatever. And he had a lot of girls that worked with him, and it was a lot of drama all the time. He was very violent. I watched him beat to death another girl that was with us.
Do you mean literally, or just...
Literally.
It's no secret that I've was trapped in addiction in a tough spot myself at midlife. But, you know, sometimes you look back and you think, what was going through my mind then?
Right.
Like, when that's happening, what's going through your mind?
I was terrified, and I just kept my mouth shut. And this girl was always trying to lie on me, always stealing my stuff and telling him I stole her stuff. And I had no business being in the lifestyle I was in, because I did grow up in church.
Right.
I was just a broken person out there. And like, I was never a good person to rob people or to even steal from people.
You don't strike me as a robber. I just got to tell you.
You know, like, I would never, you know, towards the end of the life, I did turn a little cold-hearted to where there's so many tricks and games that these girls play to please. They're so jealous and so engulfed, and so I will kill for him. I will do anything for him. So say you have a trafficker that has a bottom. That's his main girl. And I've been that before. And then you got these new girls coming in, and you don't get any attention anymore. They're being lavish with gifts. They're getting all the attention. You're not getting anything. He's forgetting how long you've been with him, how much money you've made for him, and then there you are, and you're exhausted. And then you got a quota to make every day. So I know a lot of women will be guilty of having like a regular client maybe go in and rough another girl up and take all her money and give it to you, so you've got your quota, but she don't. You know, and it gets serious. It gets really dangerous out there. You used to have people that would literally travel, and their side hustle was robbing Backpage girls. So I had to learn how to survive. I had to learn how to, okay, I don't want to stay in a hotel where you can drive up and see the doors. You know how you pull up and you got one here and here and you can see the doors?
Yeah.
I want to go into a hotel where I can stay on the inside. I learned how to, like, you can go in and get on an elevator and go up and people can't see where they're going, because you never really know who's on the other line of that phone when they call you, and they might say, hey, are you available? And it's so easy. All you got to do is look up an ad online, call, hey, are you available? I am. What are your rates? Tell them your rates. Where are you located? Sometimes if I stayed in a cluster of hotels, I would lie and say I'm at this hotel, and then when they would get there, I'd be like, oh, my bad. I'm so sorry. I'm over here. That way I could watch them drive up. Make sure they're not law enforcement, see what they're doing. But sometimes when I was slipping, sometimes when I was really high, I might say, I'm over here at the Super 8. They might pull up, and a person that travels to rob working girls, will sit out there in that parking lot and look and see when they have an opportunity to say, they might see a guy in a black car out there in the parking lot and say, oh, I'm out here in this black car. And I'm going to say, okay, I'm in room 255. And then I'm sitting there waiting on my date to come up, and they never show up. And I'm like, what happened to my date? Two things happen. Either there's another girl out there doing bait and switch, lingering around out there and catching your calls before they make it up, because 9 times out of 10, they're running from somebody and can't post an ad, but they got to survive. So they're going to find out where all the working girls are, and they're going to catch the money like that. Or second scenario is it's a robber, and he's going to go to the front desk and say, I need a room, this room, if you have it, where he can see my door all day, and he can sit there and watch me all day, see all the calls I have coming in. See, some traffickers stay with you all the time and take them and keep the money on them. Some traffickers, more big time traffickers, they're going to come through at a certain time every day and pick the money up, and they're going to go, or they're going to send security to come get the money. Sometimes they don't do it themselves, and that person's going to know, because they're going to watch you. They're patient, and they're going to come in and pretend that they're a John. They're going to download another fake number app and call you from another fake number, because you're going to recognize a number that didn't show up earlier, and you're going to see something's wrong. So they're going to come in and they're going to rob you. They're going to rape you. They're going to do whatever. And when you try to tell law enforcement that you are a working girl and you've been raped, they look at it like, oh, they just didn't pay you. You weren't raped. They just didn't pay you.
Wow.
So it is literally exhausting to try to, you know, and your trafficker's not going to tell you how to survive. He's not going to teach you any of these things. It was very hard for me. I literally had to Google. Like, when I first realized I had a pimp, I was so dumb and naive. I grew up in So-So, Mississippi. My papaw raised me out in the middle of the country. I knew about drugs. I knew about sneaking out, just being a wild little girl in the country, but I did not know the darkness that was out there. I literally Googled the first time and found out that that was a pimp. What is a pimp?
Yeah.
Wow.
How do you
Well,
pimp?
I remember whenever we first met and you told me your connection to Ole Miss, you told me your connection to Mississippi. I was blown away that this was happening down the road from the town that I love so much and so many people love so much. And the more time I spent with NAHT over the summer, I realized that's a lot of people's attitudes of trafficking is happening everywhere all the time. It's the biggest industry in the entire world, human trafficking is. And when I worked at NAHT and saw the faces of trafficking, it became a personal issue. You know, it was no longer something that was happening in India or Thailand that I couldn't see, I couldn't understand, but it was my best friend, LeAnne. I heard your
Who
stories.
you're sitting by, didn't you have desks almost
Yes, our desks were
touching
facing each other, and I have never laughed so hard so many
Yeah.
times in a workday than with you. And I just am wondering, and from my experience hearing other women's stories, learning about the trafficking industry, a lot of people don't know they're being trafficked.
Right.
So you were a victim of human trafficking for 8.5 years.
Right.
At what point in the 8.5 years
8.5 years
did you realize that you were a victim of human trafficking?
Oh, I knew pretty much right on in when the trafficker that I had all these different girls in hotels, and we're all getting money and getting it to.
It started to be pretty clear what's going on.
Started being very, very clear.
What I always say about like addiction, even you kind of start figuring out what's going on. The problem's getting out.
Right. And see, a lot of women, when they say, oh, I'm not a victim, they call in for a rescue or whatever at NAHT, and they don't think they have been a victim of trafficking. But trafficking looks like so many different, there's so many levels to trafficking. If you are trading your body, compromising your morals for a bag of drugs, that drug dealer is trafficking you. He's exploiting that vulnerability of addiction. If you are homeless and you have nowhere to live and somebody says, oh, you can come stay with me, but I'm going to need sex in exchange, that is trafficking. And then, I love it at NAHT because we say prostitution is the choice of the choiceless. Nobody wakes up one day and says, I think I want to be a prostitute today.
Yeah, that's what I tell people about, like, my son who died of an accidental drug overdose. That's what I tell people about gun deaths in cities. Nobody is born into this world wanting to shoot their neighbor.
Right.
They're not.
They're not.
Nobody is born into this world wanting to ingest drugs until they can't breathe anymore. They're not. It's addiction. And in so much of trafficking and, from what I went through in a hard time at midlife, I understand how someone gets there. I appreciate so much this definition you've given of really helping us understand what defines it, because it's under a wider umbrella than a lot of people may think, But also, I'm not saying your case is more significant than some of the other examples that you've just described. They're all significant.
Right.
Your case, though, is actually more textbook, where when somebody thinks of it, you literally were absolutely human trafficked in, sadly, textbook 101.
Right. And a lot of people think trafficking is that white van going through your community doing that snatch and grab, but trafficking in the United States looks more like being posted on ads, escort ads, and somebody taking your money and paying your money. And there is a lot of snatch and grab going on. I was probably been kidnapped 3 or 4 times while I was in the life. I was kidnapped by a trafficker from Baton Rouge. He took me out of Gulfport, Mississippi. He tricked me. He drove a Bentley. He took me to Sherwood Forest exit in Baton Rouge and posted me up in a hotel, took the phone out of the hotel like most of them did. And actually one of my Johns that he sent in came in, and I said, I need your help to get away. And we actually watched him drive away around the corner, because they're not going to sit there all the time while law enforcement's there, because he just needed a quick fix with me because he had just snatched me. He snatched me at gunpoint, and I'd actually had an altercation with him earlier in Baton Rouge a few months before, where he called me off of my ad and tried to get me to pay him, and I wouldn't pay him. So he got me later, and my John actually snuck me out of the hotel. I laid down in the car, and I'll never forget, and I got somebody to come meet me. And I was affiliated with a lot of gangs, and a lot of these traffickers are affiliated with a lot of gangs. That trafficker was a blood. The person that come to get me was a gangster disciple, and he found out from the other brothers that he had in Baton Rouge who this guy was, and he said, man, that little girl is so lucky. He said, the girls that he gets disappears. How do you think he's paying for Bentleys? There's a lot of spotters that will lure women and spot for them and sell them to other traffickers in Vegas or different cities.
It's just a whole entire organized underbelly racket.
It's yes, it is, and it's terrifying.
And it's you're listing communities as not just Oxford. You're saying Baton Rouge, Meridian, Oxford, Mississippi.
I was in Jacksonville, Florida. I was in Dallas, Texas, Houston, Texas, Pensacola, Florida.
And the whole time you're having to navigate the horribleness of being trafficked and living that life. You're also, like most, having to manage, and any of us that have done it know it's actually work itself. You're battling addiction.
Right.
Which is a whole other thing intermeshed into it.
I was addicted to meth the entire time, and when I did try to quit one time, my trafficker made me get back on it because he said he liked me much better on meth because you can stay awake for days and it keeps you going and going and going. But I was losing my mind. I was starting to have meth psychosis. And see, that's another thing that traffickers use women to control them with drugs and substances. And this is where they will play the most games with you because your trafficker only wants you to get drugs from them. And they will play the most games. They will send in their friends. They will send in people to test you and ask you if you want to get high. I always said no because, number one, if they try to trade drugs for services, they're going to try to lowball you. If they think you get high, they're not going to want to pay your rate. They're going to look at you like a junkie, and they're not going to pay the rate. So you always tell them no. Well, this is what I had to do when I was with my trafficker because he always said, you always say no. You only get drugs for me. And it's so competitive. So when a new girl gets into a city and she posts her ad, my God, you get thousands of phone calls. Like when I tell you, it's crazy because you're the new girl on the scene.
So it's not like there's 5 people looking for this action.
No, it's thousands.
How many men would you see a day?
25, probably 25. Yeah, a lot. It was, when I got to the well house, I could barely walk. My hips were like, they were really bad.
Sorry.
Well, it's okay.
When we hear about this undercurrent of America that so many of us are completely blind to, I feel like we forget there are these tiers of people, and you can kind of social climb up the ladder in this underbelly of America, and you learn crucial skills about surviving and being scrappy and getting to what you need. But now, once you reach the well house in Birmingham, once you were given the opportunity to work, how have you seen the Lord redeem what you learned to use for bad for good?
And also, how did you get there?
Yes.
What turn?
Okay. I was arrested in a prostitution sting in 2017 by West Alabama Human Trafficking Task Force. I adore these people so much. They were a game changer in my life. But the night they arrested me, they were looking for traffickers. I think they had started, sometimes some of these hotel managers will let law enforcement know something's fishy, but sometimes traffickers pay hotel management so they don't report anything. But they had reported something, and they came in that night and arrested me, and they tried to get me to go into a long-term trauma program called the Well House, and I was like, no, I'm not going. I was, loyal to my trafficker. I had a trauma bond, and he come and got me out of jail the next day. If I would have known what I was going to go through the next 2 years, the abuse with him, I would have went. He was very violent. He would waterboard me. He would choke me. He would slap me, wake me up, slap me, wake me up. It was so abusive.
And all this is going on when you've had 25 clients a day.
I had to take a call with he broke my arm, and I had a client walking up the stairs, and I had to take a client in Jacksonville, Florida at the Motel 6, I'll never forget it, with a broke arm. My client tried to take me to the emergency room, and I said, no, I'm okay.
You have to be kidding me.
No, because he was behind me choking me, and I was trying to get free, and I couldn't break free, and I literally threw my body into the wall. We actually went into the next hotel room. I took the call with the hole in the hotel wall with a broke arm, and then shortly after that, of course, we left, and it was crazy. I started losing a lot of money because I was always beat up. Clients don't want to come in there and see you all beat up. They want something, different. They're paying for something. They don't want to see you beat up. He got to where he would come in the room. He started having an obsession with me. He would stand outside of my door and listen to my calls. And then he would come in the door and just try to intimidate people. It was just crazy. It was a lot. But,
and finally,
he started using meth, and I was so happy that he started using meth because I was like, this is going to be my way out because he's going to slip. and I'm going to be able to get away. And so we were in Prattville, Alabama, and he tied me up in a hotel room, and my front tooth was knocked out. He had my arm was broke, and he had me tied up with a rope. He was gone to get another girl, and he knew that I was wanting to go. He could just tell, and he knew I was exhausted, and he didn't come back in time. And the housekeeper found me and untied me, and I saw a truck driver at the Hardee's, and I ran over there and I hitchhiked with a trucker, hitchhiked all the way to Jacksonville, Florida from Prattville, Alabama. On the way there, I remember there was a place in Alabama for trafficking. I found the number. I called. I did an assessment. She said, well, I can't tell you today. This was after 8.5 years. She said, I can't tell you today, but I will call you as soon as I find out if you got approved. So I get all the way to Jacksonville, Florida, and we had been working the Bay Meadows area in Jacksonville for about 2 years. So I was like, I can't be here very long. It was just a familiar place. So I looked on Craigslist rideshare, and somebody posted that they would give rides. So he drove me to Tampa, Florida for $110. And I called my family for the first time, and I was like, I need some help. I am trying to get accepted into a program, and I cannot post it. Like, I could not post an ad to make any money to keep this hotel room. I was dope sick. I was coming off the dope.
Yeah.
And my stepdad sent me $300, and I got a room in Brandon, right outside of Tampa, at the Clarion Inn. And the next day, they called me and said I was accepted to the Well House. They got me a bus ticket. I left the few little things that I had to my name. I had on a little sundress. Bought me a blanket at the Walgreens. I still have the blanket. Floki uses it.
And do you?
Yeah.
Her little wiener dog uses it.
Is that right?
I got on the bus, and I went to the Well House, and I never looked back, and I started my journey. And I knew from the
time. That gives me chill bumps. I went to see the work you're doing.
Yeah.
And imagine your life has changed, but imagine how you're paying it forward. And all these women as a case manager you get to work with in Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition.
Right.
I mean, you took that step. Did you know when you're on that bus, there's no going back, or is it still a haze?
Well, let me tell you what happened, because the devil is alive and real, and he's prowling like a, what is it, roaring lion?
Yeah.
Because I went layover at Tallahassee, Florida, like different layovers, and I get all the way to Montgomery, Alabama, which is 20 minutes from Prattville.
Right. I know.
Where he was at.
Yep.
And the bus driver and the oncoming bus driver got into an argument, and she said, I'm not driving this bus anywhere. And so I was like, are you kidding me? Okay, this is a sign. I should call him. Trauma bond. But I didn't. Somehow the Lord answered my prayer, and another driver got on and drove us to Birmingham. And I remember getting in the car with a girl named Maylee Gibbons, and I handed her my phone. And I just remember like, I mean, like, I knew that was it. I was in my 40s. I was fixing to get put out to pasture, if not something worse.
Yeah.
I was done. I was exhausted. I wasn't making any more money. People want young girls, or they want men, and I was done. And thank God I was done. It's like how a lifeguard, a person's out there in the ocean drowning, like a lifeguard's not going to jump in there when they're flailing around because they're going to pull them under.
Right.
The Lord literally had to wait till I was exhausted. And then he was like, okay, are you ready? And he just pulled his hand in and he pulled me out. And I knew from the second I walked into the Well House, I was like, I'm going to work here one day. And they're like, no, you're not. We don't hire survivors. And I'm like, oh, yeah. You don't know me, buddy. I'm going to work here.
Do you know who I am?
Do you know who I am?
I get what I want.
You don't know me.
And you are doing the work.
And I literally kept bugging the director. And every week I'd update my resume. And I did advocate training with Trafficking Hope. Oh, I got to just share this beautiful story. But so the first month that I was at the Well House, we went out on a Saturday serve with Church of the Highlands, and they come and pick the ladies up from the Well House and take us out to work in the community. As they were bringing me back, they were like, so how did you find out about the Well House? I was like, oh my God, these church ladies. I was arrested in a sting one night, and these church ladies come in my hotel room, and they were telling me about this place and trying to get me to come. But I was just like not having it. And she stopped, and she just looked at me. And she ran in the house, and she ran back, and then she come out and back, and they were crying. Those were the women 2 years later.
Wow.
Those were the women that were in my hotel that night, Pam Raspberry and Kathy Watson. They were the two ladies that were, she's like, you had a pit bull dog with you? I said, yeah. She was like, everything you owned was in a blue Ben, and you were at the La Quinta? I was like, yes. And she was like, that was me. I was like, no way.
You're kidding.
I just got under her wing, and I ended up doing advocate training with her and going back out in the streets of Birmingham and ministry street outreach with women. I've been able to see some of the women we were out there in the streets of Birmingham minister to go through long-term treatment and get help. But needless to say, I did go on to staff at the Well House. I kept bugging them.
No, I knew you did. I already knew the end of that story.
Right. Well,
even though I didn't know.
Yeah. And my mom ended up passing away, and I felt myself about to go back down a dark place. I was not ready for that. The Well House was a beautiful, wonderful place for me to lay my foundation for my healing. I found Jesus there. I found so much peace and healing there, but it was time for me to spread my wings. And my supervisor there at the time said, man, there's this really cool place in Nashville that's survivor-led and survivor-informed, and I really want to go work there. But the Holy Spirit literally, as I'm passing this exit, said, this is not for you, this is for LeAnne. So she connected me with Mary Trapnell and Christina, and I did an interview, sent my resume in, and in June, I packed everything I owned in my little car, and I headed to the big city of Nashville to start my new life.
Look, you could come with a guitar, or you could just have the dream, I just want to help people.
Right.
I want to help women like me.
Miss Mary loves people to sing so much. If I had a guitar, it would be over.
It would be over.
It would be over.
Everyone would have a headache.
You're playing some music. You're playing some music, though. It sounds maybe a little different. You're playing some music.
I love to sing. I sing in the choir at my church at Bethel World Outreach.
You let it flow?
Yeah.
Do you just sing?
I just love to sing.
She would walk around the office just singing.
They bought me a portable karaoke machine for Christmas, and I do karaoke case management with the clients that they want to. We have a lot of fun with it. I'm like, you totally messed up when you bought me this karaoke machine.
They messed up. They didn't know what they were getting themselves into. But I remember,
it's joy. It's joy in my heart. You know?
Yes.
I remember meeting you, and you would just drop these bombs of your story on me on a Tuesday afternoon.
Phoebe, who arrives from
I didn't know what I was getting
Young
myself
Life
into.
out of high school in the sorority. She's coming to do her internship and hello world.
Right.
Hello world. And I just remember knowing you and loving your joy and your attitude and your enthusiasm, and I couldn't believe the stories you told me. And I remember one time I said that to you, and you were like, that's an answered prayer, because
you said you couldn't picture me like that.
Yeah. And she said, what an answered prayer, that God has redeemed me so much that you don't even see who I was.
Right.
And it was such a beautiful picture of.
You might make me cry.
Yeah, well,
Maybe
I'm probably
am.
going to when I tell you a little bit about how special Phoebe truly is to me and how the Lord blessed me with her, because, and I'll probably cry, but if you've never seen Firefly Lane, you won't understand what I mean when I say soul sisters and best friends. But addiction stole my life. I started using when I was 12, 13 years old. Mm-hmm. And I never had a bosom best girlfriend, like somebody innocent, laughing innocently, talking about boys in a sweet, innocent way, talking about all the things in a sweet, innocent way. And I slowly seen how the Lord was giving me little gifts. And I literally cried one day thinking, God, thank you for Phoebe, because she is exactly what I would have wanted in a best lifetime kind of friend. And she's exactly what I need. And even now I'm 40 something years old. She's a lot younger than me. She's so wise. She loves the Lord so much. And she is my little bestie. And I don't even care about it, because it's like the Lord said, here's you a gift. You lost this as a child. This is what you lost, but it's the favor of the Lord.
And it's never too late.
It's not.
It's never too late. And I've got a friend, when you're in recovery like me, all of us in recovery, we get to work with a lot of people and help there. And they come in all ages. And there's a woman who's 2 years older than me that I've known since college, just as a friend. But I've been in her life more, just kind of, there's times, you just have to show up in somebody's life when they need somebody to help them get there. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting for me is now that she's sober, I'm seeing in her the same of you, she almost has this girl-like giddiness, and you have that, and I understand it, because that was stolen.
Right. Mm.
That was taken, but you're still breathing, you're still here on this earth. It's not too late. You can still have it. That is a beautiful story. And, listening to you talk, it makes me think. So, relatability of storytelling is always, when you're telling your story, And I, like a lot of people, have been through some things. Let me tell you, I haven't been through what you've been through.
We've all got
I
broken.
hadn't been through that. But what's interesting, so I'll give you an example. And I know there's a lot of people listening or watching who know what I'm talking about. We've all been pulled along on something we didn't want to go on. And more often, substances has something to do with it. So I'm at midlife. I'm beginning to struggle. I'm drinking more. I'm on misusing prescription Adderall. Suddenly, I find myself mired in infidelity. And I begin to think, I need to stop this. And it's going to start with stopping drinking. And in this relationship I'm in, you can imagine, guess what kept showing up? So, when you go through something, money floats away from you. Suddenly, even though I still looked like things were happening for me, hosting a TV show, doing stuff, I was so broke. And I'm trying to pull away. And I'll call it wine money. Wine money keeps showing up. Wine money keeps showing up. Do you need more money for wine to be able to go sit at the bar and have some drinks and dinner? And I'm listening to you tell that, and I'm not relating to you in the sense of, because it just breaks my heart what you and other women and so many, and not just men, have to go through. But I think all of us can relate to, some of us more than others, allowing ourselves and also being taken advantage of, that it just comes down to the point of, if you're going to survive, you just have to reach a moment where you're going to get on the bus and you're going to drive away, and I'm not going to take that wine money.
Right.
I will not.
Right.
And that's what you help so many women do. And, it's got to be gratifying to see them get their girl giddiness back.
Man, our members at NAHT, when they come in the door and their eyes are dull and they have no life in them, and in a few months they start coming to classes, because we provide a great amount of different services. We provide full wraparound support, because once they get out of treatment, they're like, well, what's next? We don't want people to slip through the cracks. Where do we go? So at NAHT, they can come in. We provide them with driver's license, bus pass, birth certificate, social security card.
Because so much of that had been stolen,
taken from them. A lot of times your trafficker
traffickers
will take your identity,
Right.
Take it all from you, and then you lose it in addiction. But then, they come in, and we have a lot of different classes, NAAA, ACA. We have classes that, just like what you said a minute ago, we have adult child of an alcoholic, grief and loss, codependency, and these are great classes for our volunteers to come in and sit around the table with our women, and they come in thinking, oh, well, I haven't been through what she's been through. I don't have the trauma that she's been through, but we all have some type of brokenness. We are broken people, loving and serving broken people at NAHT. That's what we say. And this is where they can sit around and connect on their own personal brokenness. And I love watching those bonds be created. We just had a mother and daughter that are graduating next week. So the mother came in and joined our program. And this is like a 2-year program. The daughter came in right behind her, joined our program. We just took a family picture the other day. She just brought her 3-year-old son home. The daughter did. So we're watching generational curses being broke off these families.
When you make that turn in a family, it'll spin it all the way around. Generations.
Yes.
Generations.
Yes. My director,
Incredible.
we're survivor-led and survivor-formed. Like, she has a son that's in college. Her other son works for us. Like, the trajectory of their life has changed because she is doing the next right thing, and she's living for the Lord, and she's sober. And I think that our numbers are so good at NAHT because we are survivor-led and survivor-informed.
Right.
And they can say, well, you did it.
You've been there. You did
there.
it. And role modeling in recovery is so important.
Right.
You can join with them arm in arm, and you can, be alongside them. There's not much they've experienced based on what you've just said that you haven't experienced.
Oh, yeah.
You know where they've been.
Exactly.
And you speak their language.
Right.
And you see them, and it's so beautiful to see the way God used the most broken part of your life to bring other people out of that brokenness.
Right.
And so I feel like we talk about this all the time with the loss of your son William, and what has come from that doesn't always make up for the loss you experienced, but it's such beautiful, gratifying work to see that none of that was in vain,
Right.
and that all of that can be used for good and
Yep.
to bring hope and to bring healing and to bring joy.
Yeah, my greatest shame and my greatest regret of the 8.5 years that I was gone is that I grieve my children's childhood, what they lost because of what was going on with me. And my family didn't even really know what was going on with me. They just thought I had took off and some, half and half, but they had no idea what I was going through. But
Yeah, because nobody could actually imagine that.
right.
Let's be
and
honest.
they're from a little town. Like when,
yeah.
when my sister saw me, the way I had changed, how I looked, she was like, "LeAnne, you scare me. Like you don't even physically look like LeAnne." She said, "We're from a little small town. We don't understand this." She was terrified. She just to look at me, she was terrified of me, and that really broke my heart. And I lost out on a long time with my
Right.
kids, but thank to God, like my kids are back in my life. We are building beautiful relationships for the last 5.5 years. I've been consistent. I've been there. Like, man, I just can't. The Lord is so good. Like, and I have great kids. My son just bought a house. My oldest daughter just bought a house. My daughter started her first day of college yesterday. She got a scholarship for JC Voices, a choir. They're amazing kids.
Oh.
And it's because my ex-husband got sober after our divorce, and he's like a pastor now, a fireman now, and because he changed his life, it trickled into them. And now that I am sober and I'm back in their life, I just think like, wow, our family line is
changed
getting
your
stronger and
trajectory.
stronger and
Yeah.
stronger. That's what we talked about at church Sunday about, people become something different when they pull away from God, and how our generation and our family lines are getting weaker and weaker because people are turning away from God. But when you got two people like me and their daddy that have fought for our sobriety, we love Jesus so much because we know what we've been through and what he's brought us out of. That love is pouring into our children. They see us loving Jesus. They see us staying sober. They see all the things. And, my kids were embarrassed of me at one point, but one day I hope if anybody, people used
They're
to tell
not
my
now.
kids all the time, "You're just like your mother." My prayer is one day if anybody says that to my kids, they can say, "You dang right I am." And I'm so proud of that. I'm just like my mama.
Yeah.
Because I don't want them to know all the horrific things that I've been through, but I want them to look at me one day and say, "My God, you're strong." And I journal all kind of things and I write all kind of things because in hope one day if they ever really truly want to get to know me, they will look and say, "Man."
Yeah.
So,
Well, you're so, first of all, I can tell you, I probably love what you've just said there more than anything I've heard in a long time, because that is actually the secret to how we restore families and how people ask me all the time. Our family had a big turnaround. What's the secret? I said, I'll tell you. Sure, it's a lot of things. But when I changed my life, it began to strengthen our family, just like when I was struggling.
It changed your family.
I was unraveling and just pulling that thread. It was like I was walking down the hallway, like some thread had accidentally off my family's jacket had gotten connected to me. And I'm thinking I'm out there just doing what I'm doing and I'm running around. But that thread to my family's jacket is attached to me and I'm unraveling it the whole time.
Yes.
And when you come back, you start re-knitting that.
Yep.
Love
that analogy.
And you're like, wait a minute. And you start knitting it back, and it actually works. So many times parents will call me and a child will be struggling or something. And it's not always the case, because sometimes it could be some other trauma within the family, but they'll call me and they're like, what does our child need? They're struggling. They need help. And even if it's not substances, I usually, in a nice way, try to tell the parents, because it does have to start there. Take a look in the mirror first. Where are you? What's going on there? Because even if there's not substance misuse with a parent, sometimes there can be some relationships that are struggling and unhealthy. And so I usually try to say, in a nice way, because they don't want to hear it usually, look in the mirror first. And I think taking self-responsibility is so healing for families. I mean, they will follow. Just like when we're walking away with a thread, they'll follow that way too. First of all, I could talk to you all day long. We don't have all day long. But we'll come back and do it again one day. But so tell us, like, besides the joy you get with Phoebe and whatnot, like you are a joyful person now, and I can just see it in I'm so thankful for that. And I'm so thankful you have shared your incredibly honest and revealing story with us. There is an underbelly out there, and we are called. I mean, look, there's mission work that needs to be done throughout the world, and it's all important. But a lot of times there's mission work right in our communities, right under our nose. So two things. First, and I'll remind you on the second one, tell us about like really some things that you really enjoy doing. What's fun for you these days?
My favorite thing to do, where I've noticed I have found so much peace, is to take my dog, Floki, on a walk.
Floki?
To
Spell
Shelby.
that, please.
It's Floki. It's from the Viking series.
Okay,
He was
yes.
a warrior, a boat maker.
Yep.
My dog is a killer, if you could see him, stone cold killer.
He's about this big.
No, he's huge now. You should see how fat he is.
Oh,
now.
yeah.
But it's so crazy. My mom passed away like right before I moved to Nashville, and her name was Shelby. And when I was looking for a place, I found a little one-bedroom apartment off of Shelby Avenue. We walked to Shelby Park. I put some of her ashes in Shelby Lake, Shelby Bottom, Shelby Golf Course, Shelby Tennis Court. I was like, wow. But I love to just take my dog for a walk, and we go walk to the park, and then there's a bench at the back of the dog park where under a tree where the breeze just comes in. And I took my kids there for a walk when they came, and they're like, Mom, you just seem like you have found so much peace here. And I just love to go for a walk. I like to go to the movies. I love to plant stuff. My whole front yard is engulfed with sunflower seeds.
Oh.
Sunflower plants. I love to garden. I never realized I liked to garden. I never did anything because I was always in addiction. But I love people.
Yeah, that's clear.
I love people. I just want to learn how to love. I want people to see the love of Jesus when they see me. And I want to love those. I've always, since I was a kid, I was in all sports. I was a cheerleader. I was very popular at school. And I had been sexually abused, and nobody knew that. So I tend to, the little girl coming out of the house with 7 other kids, and they're dirt poor, and her hair might be matted, like that was the little girl I would take home with me and dress up for the day. Or I always had a trail of friends that were throwaways to society. I've always loved the underdog. I've always wanted to help people. I love public speaking. You're
good at it. I hope this opens up more opportunity.
You're a star.
You are.
Phoebe was like, "Are you nervous?" I was like, "Are you kidding?"
You were born for this.
She loves anything that involves a camera. Let's just say that. Baby.
Yeah. Well, this won't be the last we do. We're going to be friends for a long time. I kind of can be a dog with a bone about storytelling sometime. You never know what crazy dreams we'll come up with in you and all these women. You don't know. You're pretty good at that.
I have the gift of storytelling. I've always had it.
You do.
Love it.
So I'm so thankful you shared it here. I'm so thankful for your honesty. I'm so thankful for your recovery. And I'm so thankful, and I know they tell you all the time, but for all these women and others that you help and make such a difference in their life. So anybody, you're LeAnne Walters with you work at the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition, which you can find online.
Yes.
And you can make a donation to, and you should make a donation and put a notation. This is in honor of LeAnne, who saves others and who made my day by sharing on this podcast. And you can find them on social media. And they also have this great bakery in Nashville people are Sweet Daisy that are selling cakes and
I can share a little on Sweet Daisy, but I'm going to save it because I want you to bring Katie in here.
Okay, well, let's do that because I actually know Katie who started that, and let's actually save that and do it. But it's Sweet Daisy. It's actually way too sweet, and she's a friend of mine, and we became friends actually before she did this.
Yes.
And so I do want to come back to that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We're going to have just a few minutes on the back porch, a fun conversation. I've got a question for Phoebe. All this work talk has got me thinking of something to lighten it up, though I will say for a heavy topic, this was pretty light. All right, so the back porch is where we have a light conversation for just a few minutes, especially now that was to talk about something so heavy, and here we are smiling. She's got a real gift.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
she's a firecracker.
She is, and so her talking about work and loving the work she does, and I've kind of ended up in the same thing where a lot of this work I do, it took me to be 58 years old to finally get where I belonged. I thought I would never get there. So let's talk for a minute on this back porch conversation where we lighten it up. Let's talk about first jobs.
Oh.
What was yours? What did Phoebe Goodwin do as a first job? You're young. I mean, you haven't had many jobs, but what was your first one?
I've always been a bit of an entrepreneur.
Okay.
I love making money because I can spend it the way I want.
True.
And so technically speaking, first job was a lemonade stand. I sold lemonade for about 10 cents and I think came home with $2.
Did you like squeeze real lemons, or was this like I'm buying the sugar pack and mixing
Minute
it up?
Maid.
Yeah.
I think it was stale, had been in the pantry for like 3 years.
Of course
it was crystallized.
Right.
But when I was 15, I decided I can work at Chick-fil-A. And so my mom drove me, dropped me off. I wore a nice outfit into.
But they're pretty picky on hiring. I mean, I'm surprised you got hired.
So my older sisters had
I mean,
worked
at 15,
there.
I'm not surprised you got hired. You understand
Yes,
what I'm saying.
15 is young. And so I walked in there and as business casual as I could as a 15-year-old, handed off my application, got the job. 2 weeks later, started and loved it. It was quite the gig.
Wow.
Quite the gig.
Did you smell like fried chicken every day when you got home?
I smelled like fried chicken every day, and I didn't like Chick-fil-A until I worked there.
Oh, really?
I didn't ever
You're the
eat
only
Chick-fil-A.
one in the country.
Literally ever. And then when I worked there and you were smelling it but couldn't eat it, I was like, I need Chick-fil-A
You need it. You need it.
And now fried chicken is my favorite food ever, and it might be the only thing I eat on any given day.
Oh, is that right?
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
You could eat it 3 times.
Yep.
Yeah. So how did that job end?
Well, when you're 15, you don't have quite the open schedule. So I was working 4 to 7 every afternoon after school. My mom would drive me to school. I'd be changing frantically in the car. I'd run in
Pretty
4
hectic.
minutes late.
Yeah.
And it got to the point where they were like, you are not working enough. And I was like, well, how much longer am I supposed to work? Okay, I'm 15 years old. My mom's driving me. I can't legally work past 7 p.m.
Yeah, that's a little, right.
So I got fired from my first job.
Phoebe got fired. You got fired from Chick-fil-A.
It was not my pleasure.
Okay, congratulations. So I didn't get fired from my first job. I quit. But I'll give you 3 guesses. What you might have even read it. I can't. No, maybe I haven't read that book. Do you know what my first job was? My
Dog walker?
first job, so it's it's interesting that I have a microphone in front of me right now. My first job with this Southern accent at a time when Southern accents were not put on the air. My first job coming out of high school, before college, I was back, well, I guess they still exist. They're not as big as they were. There were no podcasts. I was a commercial radio station disc jockey.
Oh,
yeah.
my
And actually they didn't love the Southern accent because they wanted you to have this sound like hit radio WSUH. We'll be right back. We're playing Band on the Run, Paul McCartney. It was that kind of thing.
That's pretty good.
You like that? You like
good.
that? So that's how I got the job. But listen, so I then go to Ole Miss as a freshman. Mm-hmm. And it was a commercial station in Oxford. They had a country station, Miss 98, all the hits. And then they had this other pop station. And I joined a fraternity. And you know how that goes. And there's late night work parties to clean up the house. There's drinking. I'm a freshman. I'm trying to find my way. What I neglected to tell you, I was the morning shift DJ. I came on the air at 6 a.m. And I lived in the dorm at Ole Miss. And so probably, through September, it's going great. I'm tired. But one day, and it's like a Wednesday. No. It was a Friday. There'd been a Thursday night swap, as they called it, a fraternity sorority party. It goes late. We have to clean up the house Friday morning at 6:30, and you don't have cell phones. I roll over and look at the alarm clock, and I didn't show up. There was nobody there. This commercial radio station had dead air.
Oh, for 30 minutes.
You have to repower the station up, and I didn't do it. No, it took me a little while to get there. So for 45 minutes, it was dead air. I didn't get fired like you did from Chick-fil-A. Though that fired might be a stretch. Maybe you'd get mercilessly let go because you couldn't fulfill the demanding obligations. What I did is
fried chicken.
I called the owner, and I said, I've made a big mistake. The station's been dark, and let me tell you what. I'm a college freshman. I thought I could pull this off. I can't. I probably need to not do this right now. And he said, I really appreciate that, and that's fine. I understand, and goodbye.
That was that?
And here I am all these years later. Now I can
All
have a
these years
podcast.
later, no dead air here.
It's recorded, so
You've
there's
learned.
no dead air. If I'm late, hey.
Or if there is, no one will know.
Well, and plus I don't drink anymore, so I don't go late anywhere. That's actually a thing, see. I don't go late anywhere.
Not late anywhere?
Thanks for tuning in to A Little Crazy. Follow us on social media, A Little Crazy Podcast, or you can even find Phoebe out there or me. But most importantly, also, go to Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts. Like us on there, follow us there so you always see our episodes coming. And you can sign up for our podcast newsletter at alittlecrazy.com. It's free. All you have
so
to do
easy.
is
so
put in
easy.
your email address and hit enter, and you will get everything about A Little Crazy Podcast, including information on LeAnne from the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. We'll put some more information about where to find them, how to give, how to help them out. Thanks for joining us. Come back next week.